Hi, my name is Christine Fulch, and I'm a cultural anthropologist here at Duke. I'm also a co-director of the Global Brazil Lab at the Franklin Humanities Institute. And we just want to let you know about a research project that we are embarking upon here at the Global Brazil Lab to let you know why you might be interested in it and why you might actually want to get connected to it. It's entitled Itaipú Binational Dam Post-2023, the next 50 years of sustainable development. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is let you know a little bit about Itaipú Dam and what the core issues are in this research project. So this is a picture of Itaipú Binational Dam. It's a very large dam that sits on the border between Paraguay and Brazil across the Paraná River. It's got enough electricity to power almost 9 North Carolinas, or about a third of the state of California. In actuality, it produces almost 20% of Brazil's annual electricity consumption, and it could produce something like 20 Paraguays. And so Paraguay only uses a small part of its half of the dam. This is actually the world's largest energy producing dam. There's a larger dam technically in China named Three Gorges, but this smaller dam on the Paraná actually produces the most electricity of any hydroelectric plant anywhere in the world. So it's the world's #1 power plant, #1 source of renewable electricity. Now, there's some things that are really interesting about this dam. One, aside from being really big, it's on an international border, and so it internalizes international relations, which means it's governed by a treaty. This Itaipú Treaty is going to expire in 2023, which means that a lot of things are up in the air in 2023, and that's where I think we can step in here at Duke. I am interested in putting together a Duke research team that will explore a couple of specific concerns regarding the electricity, the finances, and the international legal ramifications of this dam. So what we're going to do this year is produce 2 policy briefs. One is a recommendation plan for the government of Paraguay in particular in terms of what it might want to look for in renegotiating the treaty with Brazil. In 2023, the energy distribution plans and the financial distribution plans of the dam are going to be up in the air, and I think it's going to be of interest, particularly to the government of Paraguay, to think through how it might reinvest energy rent, not sort of in sustainable ways, and how it might think long-term in terms of how to develop hydroelectric resources in general. But specifically, I think one of the things it's going to want to think about is what to do with Itaipú and what to do with Itaipú energy and Itaipú finances. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is give you a little bit of an overview of the situation on the ground and what it is that we are hoping to do here. One thing that I think is interesting to know about Itaipú Dam is that its influence extends beyond Paraguay and Brazil. Right? This is the Global Brazil Lab, and so we're interested not just in Brazil in and of itself, but in how Brazil helps us look at the world. This dam is a really interesting test case, not just because of the 2 governments that equally co-own the dam, but because of its historical precedent in the region. So the dam, Itaipú Binational Dam, is really important, obviously. It produces a massive amount of electricity and therefore also brings in a massive amount of proceeds to both governments. But because the dam sits on an international river that is north of both Argentina and Uruguay, the dam was actually really important in establishing international legal precedent in all of South America about how to deal with international transboundary water resources, which, as we know, as we think about climate change, become more and more urgent. So the dam actually is the legal antecedent for the Southern Cone Common Market, or Mercosur. And because it's the legal antecedent of Mercosur, it is also deeply connected to UNASUR, the Union of South American Nations, which is even larger than Mercosur. UNASUR has at its heart this interest in energy integration. And there's actually an energy integration treaty being discussed among nearly a dozen countries in South America. So Itaipú Dam, by being the legal antecedent and also by being just really big, serves as a really important precedent for not just Mercosur, but also, in fact, a larger regional common market and energy integration complex. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the energy pricing and distribution set up by the Itaipú Treaty. This will also naturally lead to questions about what happens in 2023. So all of the electricity produced by this dam has to be bought by either ANDE or Eletrobras. These are the two national utility companies of Paraguay and Brazil, respectively. And the energy pricing includes a cost of the debt for construction, royalties and dividends to the respective national governments, also to compensate people for land that's been flooded, and to sort of smooth the process of running the dam. Because a lot of the electricity that Paraguay produces gets sold in Brazil, the Brazilian government also compensates the Paraguayan government a small non-market-based amount for its electricity. And the language used here is compensación and cesión, so compensation for energy that is ceded. The average price per megawatt hour for Itaipú is about $42. That's a really, really, really good price. In general, the market price for electricity is somewhere around $90 or $100 per megawatt hour, so 42 is pretty good. And Paraguay gets for its ceded energy somewhere around $6 per megawatt hour, which runs into something around $360 million every year for energy that it sells to Brazil. In total, with all of the royalties and income and the ceded energy, the Paraguayan government gets somewhere around $500 to $600 million a year from this dam. And that doesn't include things like the salaries of the employees, which are also high, or things like savings because there is actually cheap electricity. But there are two challenges immediately that come up when we think about the place of Itaipú in Paraguay. One is the challenge of something called monopsony, and another one is something called Dutch disease, or sometimes people call it the paradox of plenty or the resource curse. So monopsony is a situation, it's the opposite of monopoly, right? So in monopoly, what you do is you have one really big seller who can then control the price of a product. Monopsony is the reverse. It's where you have one really big buyer. And the situation on the ground is that actually Brazil exercises monopsony power in the dam, because Brazil is actually the market that's big enough to absorb all of Paraguay's half of the electricity. Also, there's the infrastructure. So there are ways that Brazil can set a price for electricity. Now, one of the reasons this is interesting is that the arrangement in terms of energy pricing has been governed by the treaty, but in 2023, this arrangement is up for grabs. And one of the questions will be, well, will Brazil want to pay the price that it has paid in the past for Paraguay's half of the electricity? That's a question. One thing that we notice is that there's a lot of dam construction going on in northern Brazil, and Brazil has deepened its relationships with its neighbors Peru and Bolivia in terms of natural gas resources, and so there may be ways for Brazil to offset its demand for Paraguay's half of Itaipú electricity, and this puts Paraguay in a slightly vulnerable situation because there isn't an obvious ready market for its electricity, and so there's a question about how much Paraguay can get for it and how it should plan long-term in terms of energy pricing. So that's one. Another challenge is the challenge of what we call often Dutch disease, which is what happens when you have one sector in an economy that is very highly developed and it's around one particular resource. So one of the challenges that comes with this is that because Paraguay gets so much energy rent, direct proceeds from Itaipú electricity, the tax burden in the country is actually pretty low because the government is able to get income from something other than taxes. This leads to questions of accountability between the government and its citizens, because often one of the ways that we can make the government do what we want it to do is when we say, hey, we've purchased in, we've bought, we pay taxes, now you need to sort of spend our money well. Well, if there's a source of income as massive as $500 million a year from something that is not just citizens, this sort of weakens democratic processes. But another challenge about this is that this money has been invested rather than in industry or even very much education. It's been invested in recurring costs like salaries, or it's redistributed. So it's not actually being put into things that are long-term in terms of infrastructure, or in terms of job creation, or in terms of health. And so one other sort of challenge here is that because the extra income has gone into something more like redistribution rather than investment in things like energy infrastructure, most of this electricity actually goes to things like domestic consumption rather than industry or job creation. This sort of leads to a crisis when we combine monopsony plus Dutch disease with one more thing. There are two natural endpoints for the dam. One is the expiration of the treaty in 2023, when all of the financial agreements and the energy agreements will be up for grabs. But the second natural endpoint, or point of rupture, is in about 100 years, which is when Itaipú Dam itself will fail as a dam. So dams have lifespans, even though they're renewable and the electricity can continue to be generated, and when you produce electricity, you don't use up the resource, the river is still there. Engineers know that when they construct dams, because of siltation, because of the use of the machinery, that dams last 50, 75, 100, in best case scenarios, maybe more than 100 years. So there is a natural lifespan for Itaipú Dam, after which it'll need to be disassembled and it won't be able to generate electricity. So these are two very important inflection points in terms of long-term planning, in terms of where you're going to get electricity, where you're going to get government income, etc. So this is where I think things get really interesting. What are some proposed solutions? Well, I've got two that I'm excited about working on with a team of researchers here at Duke, and then with partners on the ground in Paraguay and actually energy experts in all of South America. So I'm thinking of putting together two policy briefs. One is a research negotiation plan for the government of Paraguay, specifically thinking about the challenges and opportunities that come up with Itaipú, and potentially some goals that the government might undertake in terms of energy, in terms of development, in terms of finances. And two, a sort of larger, longer-term hydroelectric sector development plan that identifies best practices and potential opportunities, not just for this one dam, but for the rest of Paraguay's hydroelectric sector. And then, because of where Paraguay sits in terms of UNASUR and Mercosur, and in terms of energy integration, the models and suggestions that we offer for Paraguay actually have implications on the rest of the region. As we put together these proposed solutions, there are a couple of values that we are holding in place as we come up with our suggestions. First, they need to be pragmatic. Second, they need to be inclusive and pro-bottom of the pyramid. That means the solutions need to actually take into consideration all of Paraguay's population. Three, the solutions need to be culturally, historically, and politically viable. I'm a cultural anthropologist, and so I know that context matters a lot, and this is actually built into our fundamental rubric. Four, the solutions need to be environmentally sustainable and eco-friendly. And 5, they need to be long-term, right? So it's not just thinking about, okay, what happens in 2024, but rather 2100 or beyond. So we are actually at the beginning of a 5-phase research plan to address these challenges and opportunities that come up in terms of Itaipú and hydroelectricity in Paraguay, Brazil, and the region. Thank you.